For a lot of people, sonnets are the form that have them react like this as soon as they hear the word poetry. And look, I get it. Sonnet feels like the crustiest, dustiest poetic form. They follow a prescribed form, they rhyme, it's written by dudes like Shakespeare and Wordsworth and Longfellow and Percy Shelley and Lord Byron. All these names of literature. They are frequently, usually seen as more important with a capital I than, like fun or interesting or evocative. But we're about to change that because I love sonnets. And I think after this video, you might too. Maybe I'm being too optimistic. I don't know. We're gonna start by having a little bit of a refresher on, the poetic form of the sonnet, stuff that you already know. And then we'll talk about what makes me love them. And of course, in order to discuss sonnets, we're also going to be needing to show examples of sonnets. And luckily, I've already read a whole bunch of them on this channel, which I will link to down below. And the ones that we're going to be discussing today are Ozymandias by Percy Shelley, Love Is Not All or 30 by Edna St. Vincent Millay, Shakespeare's Sonnet 116, and Sonnet 24, How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And wow, some of these are a blast from the past. One thing that's still the same is my frizzy hair, apparently. So, the sonnet. So sonnets have 14 lines and they have a very prescribed rhyme scheme. There are a few different types of sonnets, and usually what separates them from each other is how the rhyme scheme goes. In the Shakespearean sonnet, which is generally the most popular in the English-speaking world, the rhyme scheme goes A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. So that means that there are 3 quatrains, quarter, 4, and 1 couplet, couple meaning 2. In the Petrarchan version, the first 2 quatrains go A, B, B, A, A, B, 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 A. Then there are 6 lines called a sestet. The rules for the rhyme scheme of the sestet are not as tight. In this case, it's C, D, C, D, C, D. It does have to start with a C to make it kind of self-contained, but other than that, as long as it rhymes, you're off to a good start. There are a few others, but those are the major ones that you will probably need to know for your test. Those are easy to put on a Scantron. How do you distill the fleeting, ethereal feeling of poetry down into a test? I don't know, but I'm sure someone is going to try. I don't want to be too cynical about that, but I guess I'm just going to be cynical today. And that fleeting feeling and art and literacy and all of that has us circling back into why I love sonnets. And the reason is called the Volta. Now, the word volta comes from Italian, and its closest synonym in English is the word turn, to turn. And it's funny because the Italian has the same sort of multiple definitions as English does. The first one is, the obvious, physical turn, or the quintessential, in 1,000 feet, turn left. It's also that sense of if you're waiting in a line or waiting to, little kids waiting to play with the toys, eventually it is your turn. It's your time. It's your moment, right? That distilled essence of turning and becoming your time is what makes a volta. And it especially describes how things change to bring you to that moment. The volta in a sonnet is the turning point. Like turning points in real life, that can be a real, record scratch plot twist kind of thing, which, twist and turn are kind of synonyms too. But it can also be, a turning of thought, a turning of mood. A very popular one is, turning of seasons, either from, spring to summer, or turning from, youth to old age. You can change the setting from the city to something more pastoral. In some cases, the poet elects to become the devil's advocate in that moment and say, but I've changed my mind about everything I've written up till now. Some poets make it very, very gentle, just kind of like a change of like the general vibe, and like maybe we're not as happy, or maybe we are happier and more optimistic. And sometimes it is just straight up like M. Night Shyamalan twist. For me, the Volta in Percy Shelley's Ozymandias is a great one to bring home this concept. In Ozymandias, as it begins, we are going along with this traveler, and this traveler's going through this long, desolate stretch of desert, and that traveler comes upon a broken statue in the middle of this desert. And Percy Shelley goes into great detail describing the like broken off legs and this face of this statue that is now sunken into the sand. And the traveler can see that the face of this sculpture is very, forbidding and cruel and powerful looking. And up until the Volta, you might be wondering, like, where are you going with this, Percy? Why do I care about this desert and this random ruin? And then comes the iconic lines, I am Ozymandias, king of kings, the Volta. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. And that's the Volta. It is the moment of the poem. It's the moment that takes this kind of, I guess, debatably interesting story about a journey through a desert, and it changes the meaning. And then at the Volta, you know what the point is. The point is, there was this big statue to this, I guess we could say like a warlord or a despot or a dictator, or at least some kind of king in the past who was so powerful that they had this huge statue made in their likeness. But now, even this king, everything about this king and what he did, except for this ruin of a statue, is gone. It's kind of this statement on how time will bring us all to our knees. No human is infallible. Even if in this moment they seem like the most powerful person ever, Father Time is undefeated. We all pass away into the sands. The poem by itself is, kind of interesting, but that Volta is what changes it from being just kind of an, oh yeah, sure, it's a desert, to, oh. But it isn't always that direct and that dramatic. And a great example of the more subtle version of the Volta is the Elizabeth Barrett Browning sonnet. When she starts off, how do I love thee? Let me count the ways. She starts off talking about how she loves him to the depths of the ocean and all the stars in the sky, and these kind of broad, hyperbolic, poetic terms that we've used through the ages to describe loving someone.
I'll give you the moon, right?
I love you with the sun. And then the Volta happens, and it's a very, very subtle little twist. And it's just in terms of the mood, but this one also elevates the poem as well. I love thee with the passion put to use in my old griefs, and with my childhood's faith. It takes it from this, cosmic, I will write your name in the stars kind of love to the love of, washing somebody's dirty socks. To me, as like an older married person, it feels more like the realities of love. And while that elevated feeling is not something to necessarily be discounted at all, at the same time, what elevates this poem and makes it more enduring than every other, oh, love you to the moon, is that kind of shift into that more mundane, more subdued kind of love. And Shakespeare's Sonnet 116 follows those themes of loving through grief and hardship as well. He asserts right from the first that if your love is true, then no sense of time or drama will break it. The love that looks on tempests and is never shaken is one of my favorite lines of anything ever. I love that line. In this case, the Volta comes at the very end, and it's a middling one, let's say. He asserts through the whole poem, if you really love this person, then your love will not change over time. It will remain constant, but that's only if you really love them, right? Then at the Volta, it seems like he waffles a little bit. He says, if I am wrong, and you can prove that I'm wrong, then I, William Shakespeare, have never written anything, and no man on earth has ever been in love. The Volta of this one is that little maybe I'm wrong. Maybe. But then he immediately turns around and says that, well, if I'm wrong, then love doesn't exist. So, which I think saying that I'm William Shakespeare and I never wrote anything, then that's kind of a more strident assertion than the entire rest of it. My personal favorite sonnet right now, which by the time this video is edited and published, I'll probably have a new favorite, but my personal favorite right now is Love Is Not All by Edna St. Vincent Millay, which has almost a series of voltas. She starts off almost like angrily or sarcastically in terms of a love poem. She says, you know, you can't eat love, but then it seems like she almost changes her mind and says, even though, you know, you can't pay rent with love, people are still unaliving themselves for lack of love alone. And then she goes on from there to say that while it's possible, like she could see a future wherein she would be in so much need that she would turn aside from her love for the person that she's writing the poem for. She says that in this kind of, she can see a hypothetical future wherein she would give up the love of this person. And then in the last line, she says, I don't think that I would. Now that I'm thinking about it, the Volta of this one is basically the meme of, would you love me if I was a worm? But like in poem form. So here's the thing. The Volta is not required of sonnets in the same way as, you know, the 14 lines, the AB thing. You will probably never find the Volta on a test. But if you start looking at good sonnets, the pattern will start to emerge that voltas are a big part of why sonnets are interesting and what makes them good. And I hope that by telling you about the Volta, you have been inspired to seek out some more sonnets for yourself. If you would like to talk more about the Volta or sonnets in general, or tell me about your favorites, the comments are always open. Make sure to subscribe before you go so that I will see you next week with more about literature.